Thank you, everyone, for joining this Business Breaks podcast and with my very special guest, David Ketchen, someone who is a real expert, someone I have massive respect for in this digital transformation space. Not only is he a great guy, but he's also truly knowledgeable in this area. He is known as a digital cat herder, which is something I'm still working on mastering. So, David, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dante. Thanks for that hype.
You're very welcome. So, David, I guess to kickstart the interview, how did you get into digital transformation? What's your backstory?
Okay, so I actually started sort of my career, once you leave school and you go, what am I going to do? And I started as an electrical fitter, which is an electrician who works on power stations. I never finished the apprenticeship. It wasn't me. And so I started a window cleaning business. And it was great, actually. Back in those days, it was $80 an hour doing windows, and the average hourly wage in New Zealand at the time was about $6 an hour. So it was good. And then it wasn't intellectually fulfilling. And turn of century, I was like, I've got to get into IT. I've got to do this. And I answered an ad for a multinational company called EDS, who are based in Plano, Texas. And it was through their business process outsourcing that I got a job as a team leader on a digitization project. Now, this particular project was for the land titles, Land Information New Zealand, and they were doing a sort of a back capture of all their titles because and you may call them deeds in other countries, but it's your property title or deed, which says, here's my property and here's the boundaries of it and here's all the legal instruments that I must abide by, fencing agreements and easements and so forth. Now, they wanted to convert 5 million documents because New Zealand's not a very big country. It's very small. Actually, it's the size of England, but, it's not a big population. And so they wanted to convert these 5 million documents, and they all had legal instruments attached to them. So it wasn't a simple digitization in the sense of, let's just scan all these things and index them, right? That's how old back capture used to work. And you've probably done that stuff in finance as well. Linz was actually getting something like 1 kilometre of filing cabinets every year of more documents. It was crazy. They couldn't cope with it. They were running out of physical space. So they wanted to go digital. And Canada had done something like this a year or so before. And EDS had done it in Canada. So, of course, won the contract. And so they needed a whole bunch of people to not just capture the information, so you'd see the land title come up on your screen, but they needed people to be able to analyze the information, actually understand what the legal instruments were, and only capture the ones that were relevant. Well, normally you've got to get some sort of legal background and be a conveyor to understand that stuff, right? And we were taking people off the streets. How fast can you type? Oh, you must be good enough. It wasn't quite like that. You had to actually understand this stuff. So here we've got the Land Information New Zealand doing digitization, but in fact, they're doing a rationalization. They're cleaning up 100 years of legalese from paper into the digital database they wanted, and it transformed their work. So they went from, I think, 12 regional officers down to 5. Lost 20% of their staff because they became so much more efficient with this particular process. So I came on as a team leader. I thought, oh, this is great. And I started playing around with Excel, as you do. You're in a new company and you're wondering, how long will this project take? Because it seems like we're not going very fast. And after a year, I turned up to the project manager and I says, I don't know if this is right, but my spreadsheet says we're still going to be doing this for like another 25 years. And they went, oh, you should see my spreadsheet. And he had all these nested ifs and whatever. It came out to the same sort of result, mind you. So suddenly I became involved in workflow and how to improve things, because my team was already producing 20 to 25% more than every other team every week. And no one could work out why that was. It was very simple, and we can talk about that later. But I ended up doing a whole lot of stuff around workflow, and I had a whole bunch of ideas, and they kept sacking the operations managers. So we had a team of about 350 staff at this stage, really burning, through money on this project and getting nowhere. They brought in KPMG. So, what's that? $2,000 a day for a consultant. And they hang around for a couple of weeks, as long as they can. And they came up with a solution, said, so we were doing like 2,000 widgets a week at this stage. And they said, oh, we think you probably max out at about 6,000, but we're not quite sure how you can get there. I mean, well, thanks for that. But anyway, we'd already gone through 5 ops managers. They just kept getting fired because they couldn't get it working, and the company's getting really stressed now because they're making penalty payments. And I turned up to we had a transformation manager come in, so they hired in a specialist, and he's like, oh, and I need a new ops manager. And I put my hand up, and out of, it wasn't respect, but it was like, yeah, okay, come along to the interview. And I brought along a 10-page plan that said, this is how I'm going to fix the site. And the service delivery manager said, when we saw that plan, we knew you were it. And so I then went and implemented the plan, and I got the staff together. So we had about 200 about 250 in the day, about 100 at night. And I said, KPMG have come in here and they think you're not good enough. They think you can only achieve 6,000. Well, I actually believe we can do 40,000 a week. And we're going to do it. And they all just sort of look at me. But I actually had the respect of the floor because I was doing the work myself. Yeah. So the transformation that I got involved in, so here we've got a digital transformation for the client. It's a digitization project. But now I'm involved as a transformation manager. I've got to take my program of activity and where my outcome. So, and this is the key thing about any transformation. You're taking it from one state to another state. It's about an outcome. It's not about, oh, I'm going to slap in a new platform and that'll make everything right. That's modernization. But transformation says, I'm unhappy with my current outcome and I need a different outcome. And my outcome had to be productivity. And we did get to 40,000. It only took 3 months to get there. But it involved a whole lot of, a whole number of activities because, when you do transformation, you'll be aware of this. It's not one thing that transforms a business. You've actually got a whole myriad of little things that create the critical mass of change to do that, right? So that was the first project. And then it had a sister project running next to it, which was survey conversion. This was true digital transformation. It was absolute world first. Never been done before. So bleeding edge. And they were bleeding. So it wasn't our area of expertise, not for EDS. So they had subcontracted this to the government mapping agency, because a survey map is the map of the boundaries of your property. They get out their theodolites and they do their thing and they go, okay, so whatever. It's very mathematical. And then they take all those coordinates back to the office, and they used to draw it out on a piece of paper and then submit that to the Land Information Office. And now they're going digital. And what they created was a digital, I believe it's cadastral is the term, which refers to boundaries of properties. So now what had to be done was the analyst had to look at that survey map, so the image would come up on screen, and they've got to take down all the coordinates of that map, but it had to go through a transformation process as well, because if you could picture if you got paper drawings of all the maps of your street, all the boundary maps, have now got to actually meet. It's all got to meet, bang on, and connect like a puzzle, and allow, as the bigger it gets, it's got to allow for the curvature of the earth. So it's got to slightly adjust a little bit the further out you go. And that was a really tough thing to do, for GIS stuff. It was like, wow. It was there were case studies being written about it. It was really exciting. But the mapping agency couldn't do it. They're the experts. They could not do it. In 2 years, they had managed to get through to quality assurance only 5 maps that pass QA. They knew them by name. It was map number. It was terrible. So the government put their agency into liquidation. It was the first time the government had ever put one of their own agencies into liquidation to stop the penalty payments that they were having to pay to the other organisation. And so EDS had to pick up the bits. And I said, hey, I can do that. I've just done this other project. No worries, I'll do that. And they went, yeah, all right. So now we're transforming not just, we're deep in a digital transformation, because this is radical. It's a complete process change for the client. But pretty much still my brief is productivity. How do I change the outcome of what's happening? And when I turned up, I went around asking them, what's your quality like? They all said, it's fantastic here. We've got 95% quality. I'm like, how do you work that out? They go, so each map has got like 500 things you've got to capture on it, and we get 95% of them right. And I'm like, you do realize that's 0, right? You failed that map. You did not hit 100%. It's 0. And they went, oh. No wonder they can't get anything right. So, and I guess we'll talk about how that got fixed. But that was my introduction to transformation. So remember, window cleaner, now running the two biggest business transformation and digital transformations in the country's history.
Yeah.
So, and I used to say, it's all right. I can see crap a mile off. So just had an eye for it. Yeah. But you once you learn quality and achieving a quality outcome, that's a transferable skill you can take anywhere.
Brilliant. And definitely a lot to take out of that. I'm glad I'm recording it, because I'm going to go back and take notes. I can tell you that from my experience, any sort of transformation is not easy. It requires a lot of thinking, a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of disappointment. And because of decades, and in your case, possibly centuries of legacy institutional structure that needs to be unpicked and then rethought of and reworked.
Yes.
And the culture then has to be, when you say it's not just one thing, it's many things that need to be addressed before you get critical mass. I completely agree. Sometimes you can implement one thing and it either never takes off because people think that's the end of it, or people themselves, they revert back to their old habits and behaviors and ways of thinking. So it's like really nothing more than a band-aid. And then, as you say, taking the opportunities to step up, to get into transformation is probably the key. And I think in my career, it's not when I've hidden, it's when I've actually had to step up as well.
Yes.
So I completely hear you, and amazing backstory. Thank you, David. My next question is really about and it's probably an obvious one, but the key benefits of digital transformation in business. And I guess in the context of right now, where everything is pretty much digital, that's apparent. You can't go anywhere without a smartphone. Your customers are expecting to have an app to engage with you, or at least a website. So what more can we do in terms of where are the big opportunities? Because looking at the statistics, it seems like there is certainly in the transformation space in the next 5 years, between 2020 to 2025, investments from business into digital transformation will more than double, from just under $500 billion to $1 trillion. So where do you think that spend is going to go in, or where can it be best positioned right now? Where's the big opportunity?
So I just have to process that one for a sec, because it's a big question. And I know it's one that my own country, New Zealand, is trying to get its head around. I read an article today which said the productivity we're losing, generally businesses in New Zealand, about a day a week on activities that could be automated. And it comes out at billions of dollars in lost, depending on how you calculate it. Because you go, well, if I spending this time doing a manual process, if I didn't have that time, would I actually spend that time generating more money for my business? It's people who come up with these sayings, well, you'll save $1 billion. It's never quite as clear cut as that. In my experience in transformation, we're talking about getting a different outcome. As I said, you go from one state to another state. And this is often where digital transformation falls down. And studies have been done. I think it's the magazine CIO World had a study just a few years back. 95% of all digital transformations failed. I've mentioned it before. A client I went to recently in Australia, they will not even let you talk and use the word transformation. It's got negative connotation. But that's really sad, because it shows it's been a failure. And I think part of the problem is that there's been a belief that technology, because it's called digital transformation, there's sort of this guess that some sort of technology is going to give me that transformation. Now, when I was doing my transformation activities, we had really big teams with us. So we had the applications were on site, and they're trying to fix the stupid software that they'd made. Oh man, the first 6 months we had a hot fix every damn night, and we had to stay back and test those hot fixes for the next day. And you cannot do enough regression testing when you don't really know what you're doing as a user. You get really good at it, but it wasn't until finally we got a really strong project manager came in and said, stop this nonsense, do it properly. But the apps guys would always say, oh, I'll give you a 20% gain. It was always this magic 20%. I'll give you 20% product. How much will that cost me? Oh, that'll be $1 million. You get nicked. I'd say to my team, thank you each night. Hey, thanks for what you've done. I get a 20% productivity gain. I put some gamification on the floor and say, hey, look, you can win these cool logo prizes if you get your output up. Wow, I get a 50% productivity gain. It costs me, a couple of bucks. Don't give me this technology stuff. It's not about the technology. Technology is a tool. It's just part. So when you eat a meal, normally you have a knife and fork, right? Maybe you got a spoon. It's dessert, right? We'll have a spoon. But you know what? You don't need those. You can just pick it up with your fingers and you get the same outcome. You're going to get it in your guts and it's going to taste yummy. You'll make a mess. That's true. But the outcome is you got fed and you didn't need the tool. Now, if you don't have a plate, the plate is a tool. You go, oh, that's not very good. You can still do it. You can do it out of the, we do this takeaways. Oh, I'll just eat it out of the takeaway thing, right? So you've got to be realistic about the tools. You've got to be thinking, what's my outcome that I want? Let's talk about an example of digital transformation that happened and no one paid attention to it and in fact are fighting against it. The transformation is we get a pandemic and all our governments around the world say, oh, you can't go to work. It's like, what? What are you talking about? I can't go to work. No. You'll spread germs. Stop it. Stay home. A lot of countries went into lockdown. We went into lockdown. It was, quite tough. Now the business goes, well, I'm not going to shut my business. If they're a hairdresser, right, and you've got to have a person in the chair, that's very, very hard. But if you're an IT company or a bank, you don't say, well, I'm stopping my business because my people can't come in. You think, oh, I've got to do this differently now. Let's see if you can work from home. Oh, you can work from home. That's fantastic. That was a transformation. They needed the outcome of doing business, but they had to transform from being in the office. Now, think of the other transformations that came from that. Much lower carbon footprint. I've barely seen any company say, hey, look, working from home, we saved X units of carbon because none of our staff had to drive into work. We know the roads were empty. It was fantastic. It was so quiet. It was lovely. People walking around, waving at each other. It was lovely in the neighborhood. They still go home and do their work. I know a lot of businesses suffered, cafes and all those sort of downtown businesses, they suffered. But in fact, the transformation occurred. It was a digital transformation. And now you find people fighting against it who don't understand transformation. They don't go, look at all the good things that happened. I've got happier staff. Not all of them. There are some who need to be with others. And some jobs work best, when there's like social worker or a doctor, you actually want your patient there. It's not that great over the phone. You can do it. It's not great though. But a lot of people who could work from home had better morale because they can see their family for a change. So if I've got good morale, when I did business transformation, one of the key things I'm trying to do is get great morale. If you can get people to feel good, their productivity will increase. If they feel rubbish, garbage in, garbage out. We know that in IT. It's with data. If I've got bad data and I put it in, I will not get good data out. If I've got bad morale in, what sort of productivity out am I going to get? This is not rocket science. I'm a window cleaner. It's obvious. That's how it works, right?
Yeah.
It's not hard. So here we've got all these happy people. We've got less carbon footprint. They're spending a lot less money. Transformation of real estate. Man, I could save all this money in real estate. I can save all this money in marketing, the cost of signs on my building because no one's walking by anyway. And they go, you know what, come back to work because you make me feel important. I don't feel important when you're not at work. And so they've missed the point of transformation. They had it. And this is one of the key things with any transformation project. You've got to find the people that are going to inhibit that transformation, the blockers. You've got to find a way of, I always looked for them, no matter what project I went on. Who was totally against change because they had something to lose? Now I've actually got to either give them something to replace what they're losing, or I've got to make the hard call and say, I'm sorry, you have been a hero here, but we are transforming, and that service is no longer required. Thank you.
That's profound. There's a lot of things I took from what you just said, which is amazing.
Because I blabbered on so long.
Oh, yeah. And I let you, to be fair. But seriously, I mean, the thing that you highlight is the obvious benefit to the planet with carbon footprint. When I was on holiday in Croatia, Dubrovnik, last year, I'd never seen such crystal clear blue water when I was swimming and scuba diving in the sea. And they said, no, it wasn't like that last year. But COVID stopped ships coming back and forth, which basically suddenly cleaned up the water, which was to my benefit, and also because of the lack of tourism the previous year. The other thing is that, as you say, if I could put it in one overly used sentence, common sense isn't that common. And unfortunately, what you've explained is that there are people who would like to have other people around them. Some of them are naturally not at that position, but they're extroverts and they naturally get energy off others. But there are others who just want their minions around them in sight so that they can feel important. And as you say, there are people, and I've experienced this, the heroes who are actually blockers. So in the sense of going through a digital transformation, they are the villain, but they're a villain who's dressed up as a hero. Yes. What they're doing is they're saying, we want what we want now. We want the comfort of now. I'm protecting my staff now by protecting how they work, keeping them in comfort, mollycoddling them, but not realizing that longer term it's going to be that much more painful as a business, because you become less competitive and less productive.
And what happens is the longer they maintain that status quo, everyone else is still carrying on in business. Fintech's taking off. It's doing its thing. Not always well, but it's out there and it's making a lot of noise. And if you've got people who are trying to maintain the status quo, that's just dragging it out longer before you get to change. And by the time you get to change, now I've got a lot of things I need to fix. So I'm very weary of heroes. They're great at holding it together. It's true, but they're holding together the current state. And in transformation, when someone says, no, we want to get to a new way of doing things because we want a different outcome, right. And now what I'm looking for is the agents of change, those who are willing, who can understand that vision. And if you're in charge of transformation, it's your job to sell that vision. I used to say to my team, we're not doing a project. We're going on a crusade. This is major stuff. But we're gonna do the impossible, and people are going to look at us and go, "How did you do that?" Every one I did, we tripled productivity while increasing quality, and no one could understand that. Because people weren't burnt out either. It's very simple. You just fix the quality all the time. You fix the quality. I don't care if it's data. I don't care if it's a process or communication. Just fix the quality, and then all that effort you're putting into will just naturally convert into productivity. It's just an energy thing. You're just changing one state of energy to another.
And that's critical, not to take shortcuts early on, even though they're tempting to try and get around quick win and early result, because you're setting yourself up for more struggle and more pain longer term when you take those tempting shortcuts, because you may not have done as deep an analysis, or you may not have considered certain things. And then there's also the traps that are set for you, where, as you say, the so-called hero, the hero of the status quo, shall we say, who's ready to grandstand when the deployment fails or isn't as smooth as it was sold out to be. Yeah, exactly. Given that, what are the key strategies, capabilities, and practices to effectively execute a successful digital transformation? And again, with that, I was going to ask about overcoming barriers, but I think we've covered that in the previous questions. So really, how do you define success in digital transformation?
So, okay, that's a big question as well.
Sorry.
Because there's just so many different views, really, of what the success was. So, when I took on the transformation project I had. Now, remember, it was an outsourced transformation, so the client couldn't do it themselves, and they had gone to experts to do it. And so now I'm responsible for their transformation. And when I took it on, they were an unreferenceable client. But they were not, no new business was allowed to talk to them. All right. So I've got a quote here from the National Processing Manager of Land Information New Zealand. The two examples I gave at the beginning. And he says, EDS delivered with a lot of patience, and there was a real willingness to understand our needs, which was of utmost importance in this complex project. They became our most referenceable client. So your stakeholders' delight is a KPI, and it's a pretty important one. If they're not delighted, you have not achieved your transformation. So you've got to determine, first of all, who are you transforming for? And I think this is a problem many have. So am I transforming for my stakeholders because I'm looking for cost reductions and better profits? Am I transforming to satisfy some manager's ego, who's been sold a package and now has to make it work? We see a lot of those, right? It's like, oh, you've bought that? Oh, okay. You want us to implement that? Fantastic. And then there's transformations that are for the sake of customers. You better have a good voice of the customer and understand what they want. So you give an example of a transformation. This will be a business process one. And I'm just trying to remember the name of the company. It was like a building supply company in the States. And they were in the top 3 for customer satisfaction. I'm sure it'll come to me after this interview. But they were in the top 3. And then they went through a transformation where they ran Lean Six Sigma through the business. And at the end of that year, they didn't even register in the top 50 companies for customer satisfaction. Now, someone hadn't thought about the transformation from the customer viewpoint. Now when digital transformation started, we saw banks, because I was with an IT company. So EDS got bought by HP, and I became part of the HP enterprises for some years. And we're constantly trying to sell to banks, because banks got lots of money. And, we did a lot of back-end processing for them anyway. And you try and help them understand what you're trying to do. Is it's nice you want an app, but you want to connect your customer communications into that app. So, they get a notification of their statement, and all the information that's relevant to them comes into that, and now it's useful to them. And they're like, no. We'll just build this app. And then they had a lovely app, but nothing in the back office had changed. It's like, that's not digital transformation. So, you've put a bit of lipstick at the front, but what's transformed for the customer at the back? I'm still taking as long as ever to get my stuff. We see, I worked a lot in customer communications. So we used to call this CCM, Customer Communications Management, which is a fancy name for document composition. I will take data that's really awful, and I will turn it into something that makes sense for the customer. Statements, invoices, particularly like if you've got a Vodafone, a phone company, and you've got data, and you've got your mobile, and you used to have a landline. No one has those anymore. And you might have a TV in there as well. And these things would pull in. They would all come from different billing systems that have been, services that have been purchased and amalgamated. Pull in all this nasty data and put it into a nice little document, right? So that's great. And it's document composition. You're just formatting data. But, Gartner comes along, and Forrester, and they say, no, CCM. There's no management with that customer communication. It's just a customer communication. It's no management, right? So you want to transform it. How about we add some management to it? How about you start tracking it and seeing what actually works? And how about you stop sending out, things that were done in the 80s, print style stuff.
Yeah.
Why don't you turn that into something that works for a mobile phone and make it responsive and actually useful? So I see this sort of transformation. It's always half measures. No one seems to, they're not quite sure who the audience that they're delighting is. This is like strategy 101, right? If I don't know what my outcome I want, I'm just going to do stuff and iterate it. Might as well just adopt Agile. Let's not talk about that. Yeah. And maybe something good will happen. That's not good business. It says, if I want a digital transformation, who's my audience? What outcome do I want? I'm going to measure against that. So that would be my number one.
Thank you.
Probably got 2 and 3, but we'll leave it at that.
No, that's fine. That's fine. And it kind of answers my next question in terms of better outcomes for the end users. It's clear that if you're not serving anyone at the end, there's no transformation. There's just, as you say, modernization. You can overlay a new platform, but if it's not translated into anything different, then you've got nothing. You've just wasted a whole heap of cash that could have been put to just simple process improvement.
Lloyd's Bank, how many billions had they set aside for their digital transformation? £3 billion or something, and it sort of comes to nothing. And you go, that's a shame. That's a bit of a shame. Oh, one thing I should mention about transformation, it almost always involves rationalization, a cleanup. If you don't have that cleanup, you are picking up your junk from one house, you're putting it on a truck, and you're bringing all that junk into your nice new house. We not only rationalized our processes and how we organized ourselves as on those projects, but we had the client working with us, rationalizing what they wanted us to do and thinking about it and going, do we really want all this stuff? What would be a better way of how to present this to our customers? And I think, if you can engage your end audience in that transformation process, so they are able to be part of it, they will accept it because they've invested now, right? You're taking my ideas. I don't care that they were stupid ideas. You've given me my stupid ideas. I'm going to do that. Or they were good ideas. I'm so happy. You want to engage those who are going to get the outcome. And that's with the employees as well in transformation. None of my transformation projects would have been achieved anything if I hadn't engaged the employee base really, really tightly and strongly, constantly, all the time, and appreciated their feedback. Monetarily, there were all sorts of different gifts that got given to people who contributed ideas. So important. You're not going to transfer you need to get your business, your people, to adopt that change as well. Otherwise, like you said at the beginning, they'll resist it. They'll go back to their old behaviors because what's in it for them? There's nothing in it for them.
Thank you. And final question, because
the end, the time has come.
No. Final question on transformation, should I say? And then we'll go into some sort of more light-hearted topics. But just thinking about what you mentioned about managing transformation, and how should someone who's managing a transformation look to develop their talent in order to thrive in a constantly changing digital space?
Read. Be a reader and set yourself time every week, whether it's part of your day or a set time in that week, to read as much as possible about your given either the speciality you're in. If you're in finance, you've got to be reading about finance. If you're in leading, read about leading. Read. I absolutely insisted on my team leaders all taking time out. The whole management team were given time to go and read stuff because it refreshes you. It's giving you when you're transforming, you're thinking on your feet the whole time. You're constantly going, is this working? Is that working? I've got so many things to keep track of. And you will empty yourself out. It's very easy to burn out on transformation. And so you want to be taking stuff in and going, that's new. The second thing is talk to people all the time. On LinkedIn, I'm known as, I'm always going about coffee, right? On a project, I'm always having coffee. I go home, I'm like, it's so much coffee today. I would be sitting down all morning. I would have a different person out from the floor, from the IT group, a leader. I'd be quizzing them about how things were going. I'd be getting their perspective and taking the temperature. What is working? What is not working? And you want to be talking to those people being affected by change as well. This is, you don't want to, it's not an ego thing, right? I don't want to be mixing with just the managers and doing my networking stuff. Yeah. I want this to be successful. And it's people who are going to make this successful. I want them to be successful. I need them to tell me what's not working. You only get that by going to see them. Now, you can do that from home these days, but it was so much more fun to go and sit down and have a coffee with someone.
I think so. I mean, you can't beat that from a networking perspective. Face to face makes so much. It's so much of a difference. But I mean, as you say, there's not a lot we can't do virtually. With that being said, I mean, you're in New Zealand, I'm here in the UK, so, and we're face to face and we know each
Yes.
other. We have a good sense of each other, and thanks. Yeah, you managed to capture my likeness, which actually was my final topic of conversation, David.
Oh,
So thank you for being such a wonderful painter and creating my new profile picture, which is up on all my social media. And really, it's, shall we say, let's not go there, but it's much better than an NFT. And it's hand drawn. It's not created by some algorithm that's kind of put me into some sort of pixelated digital Picasso. But I mean, your artwork has been growing steadily, and you've been posting that up on social media, your journey to rapidly improving and creating these wonderful visual images. The last thing I want to say is, what are the parallels you see between what you're doing now and, I mean, what your career to date? Is it just this continuous learning journey and evolution that you're expressing through your newfound passion for art, or painting, should I say?
Well, there are a lot of similarities in different activities we do, transferable skills, right? So as I said, I never finished any management course. I did do a lot of reading about management and leadership, and applied what I had learned. And you heard I was a constant reader as well to keep my skills fresh. I'm a great believer that there's huge potential in every one of us. And but we're all the same. I know we're all different, because backgrounds, cultures, and things shape us, right? And sometimes gender causes different ways of connecting with others as well. But we've all got the potential to do the same thing. And I wasn't an artist, just the same as I wasn't a transformation manager. I taught myself how to do it. I believed I could do it. And I went and practiced it and saw it happen. And what I get from art is, in my experience of change management, a lot of it is about pattern matching. You're looking for patterns. You're looking for good patterns that you want to repeat. You're looking for things that are dissonant, things that don't seem to be connecting well, and you're trying to understand, why don't they connect? How could I get it to connect? Now, art is like that. So when I start a picture, there's nothing. It's just got to come out, And with pastel, you start. I'm sure it's the same with paint. You start and you're just making sort of dots over the place, and then they start coming together. And then the more you work on it, suddenly, Dante appears on the page. It's like, oh, thank God for that. I wasn't sure it was going to happen, but hey, there he is. Fantastic. And for me, I'm a huge believer in quality control. I listened to Social Saturday on LinkedIn today, and I'm not going to say their last names because I'll get it wrong, but Trevor and Julie and Stephen all did a fantastic stream. It was actually I watched it delayed because it was way too early for me, 3 a.m. or something. I'm not that dedicated to Social Saturday. I watched the delayed coverage, as it were. And at one stage, Trevor name drops me. And I'm like, oh, heck. And he says, oh, and have you seen David's art? And he goes, oh, he makes himself out to be some sort of pedestrian, and he's really got all this talent. And I'm thinking, no, I understand quality control. And to me, if I haven't achieved that quality yet, it's not where I want it to be. It may be good enough for someone else. That's lovely. But it's not good enough for me. And in business transformation, it was exactly the same. Digital transformation, I was in the 5% group. who overachieve. We hit our target, we blew it out the water. And my project's finished, not 25 years late, they finished on time. One was 2 years ahead of revised schedule. It's like, well, that's quite a big savings in time and money to do that because it's quality. And art to me is, I get to manage my own quality. It's not just about, creating a picture. I'm in charge of my quality, and I like that, It doesn't always work, because it's hard to, statistically it makes sense. So we're allowed those bad batches. But yours came out quite good quality, so I'm glad about that.
So am I, mate. And thank you, David. You've been a wonderful guest, and it's been a pleasure to interview you. And, we have our conversations anyway, and just to get your backstory and some of those insights, it's been amazing. Before I close out, can I ask, how would my listeners get in touch with you? What's the best channel to reach out to you on?
It's LinkedIn these days. Just do a search, David Ketchen, LinkedIn. Look for silly pastel pictures. I said recently, actually, on LinkedIn today, I know all this stuff about digital transformation, productivity. Guess what? I don't talk about it. I talk about coffee and paintings. But yeah, if anyone wants to reach out, happy to talk about past experiences. Yep, LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. And with that, we end this episode of Business Breaks. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. Take care.